Why not?
All right, guys. All right, guys. This is gonna be recorded. All right. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at some extra stuff. So yesterday we did a really lengthy lecture on all of the Xcode things. Today it's mostly some stuff that I've learned that is not on the platform that could be useful for you. And also after we get through that, it's just going to be like an open Q&A and a demo if you want on yesterday's things, right? So before we start, just a quick announcement. Tomorrow it's going to be hackathon. Don't be late. Come on time. If you're behind, you can catch up. But otherwise, you're going to have a really fun time, playing around with Core Motion, right? And we'll get into that more about Core Motion tomorrow. So, okay, so we're going to talk about some of the little things, little shortcut things, and then we're going to talk about assigning event handlers to UI objects that are not buttons, right? So if you have a button, you can drag it into the code and make an action. For a view or for a label or for anything else, you can't do that. It won't let you select action. So we're going to make our own. We're going to force it to have a response to some kind of event, right? So we're going to make sure that we can call functions in our code via any element in our storyboard, right? So we're going to do that. I don't believe it's on the platform, right? So this is some extra. Also, I'm going to show you guys a little simple demo about animations. It's really easy. And then we're going to, just have a Q&A about, some of the assignments yesterday, and I'll do a quick demo for whatever it is that you guys are stuck on. All right, so cool. Let's go ahead and create a new project here. New project, single view application. I'm going to say it's going to be May 11, 2017, lecture. Next. Put it on desktop. All right, so we have our Xcode here, and in our view controller, notice that if we have things that are commented out, it's green, right? Now, I like to have this this thing where if I'm working on something and it's kind of like important for me, I like to have it yellow, like this, this needs work, right? So that when I glance through my project, it's very easy for me to see it. All right, let me make this a little bigger. There we go. And also, while we're here, right, what I did was I clicked on Xcode, Preferences, Fonts and Colors, and here I can change my, the style I want for, my text editor here. So I'm selecting Dusk Demo Small. This is one I made, a custom one that I made. But the thing is, in order for you to make it yellow, you just select which one ever you want, and then in the documentation markup section, you can change the color to whatever color you want, right? So documentation markup is triggered when there's more than 2 forward slashes, all right? So I like to make it yellow. So that's just a little shortcut I wanted to show you guys. Okay, what's up next? Event handlers. Okay, so let's take a look. I'm gonna minimize this a little bit. All right, so let's say in our storyboard, let's have a button. All right, let's just put our button over here. Gonna give it some auto layout constraints. Right, that's all it needs. We're gonna set the background color to, let's say, gray. Okay, so in our view controller, open up the assistant editor. We go to our storyboard. Notice that if we control drag this button into our code, we can select action, right? And if I do this, it'll create what's essentially Oops. See, this is a bug in Xcode that I've noticed, and I think I'm gonna have to maybe like restart Xcode.
What is it saying?
It's saying that it's just not letting me connect, even like just by me able to create this box here, it should be able to let me do it, but it's not letting me do it. Let me see if I can create something. Oh, okay, that works. Okay, let's make a let's make an action. Handle button pressed. The type is a UI button. Connect. Okay, so this guy is a function, right? The IB action is a function that will run every time that button is clicked, right? So what I want to do is kind of make this kind of situation here without needing a button for it, right? So let's go ahead and delete all this stuff. I'm going to delete my button. Instead, I'm going to put in a label. Okay, so we're going to put label up here, give it some constraints, and we're going to give it, let's say, a height and a width. All right. So we're going to make the background color of this guy, say gray, so we can see it, and we're going to give it, let's say, a width of 100, and then a height of 50. Okay, and we're going to make this centered in the center. Right, so now we have this label here, and if we control drag over, we can't select action. There's only two, outlet and outlet collections where we went through yesterday, but I can't make an action. But in order for me to actually programmatically create an event handler for this, I need to have an outlet for it. Right, so we're going to create an outlet for it. We're going to call this the label. We'll just call it my label. All right. Not very creative today. Connect that. Cool. So now we have this label here with an outlet, and we want to add an event handler to this label. All right, so I'm going to close this now. So over here in the view did load, whenever the view loads for the first time, I'm going to run whatever the code is in this function. Right, so here I'm going to create the event handler variable or constant. All right, so I have this in my notes over here. Basically, you need to copy this line, right? And honestly speaking, I can't really memorize these as well. I kind of have it, in my pocket. So over here, we're going to create a constant. We're going to name it something explicit, right? So here we're going to name this, my label tap. Okay, and this guy is what's called a UI tap gesture recognizer. Right. So here. Let me try this. UI tap gesture recognizer. There we go. And if you do that, it's going to show you the list, right? So the syntax kind of changes. I want to make sure that, is it the same? It was. What? So the target is going to be self, meaning that self is this view controller, and the action is going to be a function inside of your, your view controller. So here we're going to say the function is going to be called handle label or my label tapped. Right? And right now it's going to give me an error. It's going to say you don't have that function in your, in your code. Right? That's what this is. See, it's underlined. It's saying that use of unresolved identifier handle my label tapped. But what we're going to do is we're going to create that function down here. Right? So we're going to create that over here. And then we're going to, in this function, we're going to say print label, oops, this was tapped. Okay. We're going to do Command B to build it. There we go. We need to invoke the function. So it turns out that you do need this hashtag selector stuff in here. And then we can get rid of, we can do that. Okay, so now it's good. So every time I've created what's called a UI tap gesture recognizer type, right? So in Swift, if we want to instantiate new instances of certain classes or objects, we put the name of it and then with the parentheses to initialize a new instance of it, right? So here I'm initializing a new instance of a UI tap gesture recognizer, and that's a special object that allows me to assign event handlers. There's also UI, swipe gesture recognizer, UI, hold long press gesture recognizer. There's a lot of other ones. This one is for tap, right? So once I create that, I'm going to enable the actions to be done on my label is user interaction enabled, right? So here I'm going to enable actions on the label, right? So it's going to be my label dot is user interaction enabled, and we're going to set that equal to true. If we don't do that, then it's not going to respond to the tap, right? And then the last part is we're going to assign the event handler to our label, right? So this is going to be add gesture recognizer and then the constant that we made, right? So it's going to be my label dot add gesture recognizer, and then the gesture recognizer is my label tap, the one that we created up here, right? So the names have to match, right? So once we do that, if we run this now, if I click on the label, we should see my label was tapped being printed out in the console, meaning that this function was triggered, right? There you go. Look at that. See? There's a bunch of them because I clicked a bunch of times, right? But we essentially created an action for this label, and it can be a label, it can be a view, it can be anything, right? It doesn't have to be a button now. So it can be an image, right? If you have a little icon and you want it to, be a button, then that's how you would do it. So now we're gonna use this little button up here, and we're gonna create a little animation. All right. So you guys have seen a lot of apps have like this thing where there's like a little side menu that comes in, right? If you swipe or if you click, like the Algo app that I made, right? So we're gonna kind of build a little demo of how that would work. All right. So let's make this bigger. I'm gonna hide this guy. So this is what we want to do. All right. We want to create a view. This view is going to go inside of this view controller, and let's say we want the color to be purple, like that, so we can see it, right? So our view, we're just going to make it so that it covers everything over here. Okay. So let's give it some constraints, right? Let's say we want this view to be left, top, bottom, and then we're going to give it a width. Okay. So let's say the width is going to be 300. Okay, cool. So this guy, this is kind of like the end state that we want to have it, right? Maybe we want to have it like not all the way over here, but maybe like a little less. But the idea is that it's gonna, in the end, it's gonna show, right? It's gonna show. We're gonna see the purple. But in the beginning, what we want to do is we want to hide this guy. So we want to hide it and make it, not on the screen. We want to have it like to the side. So this is the end state. The beginning state, we want to have it leading space. If it's negative 300, then we won't see it, right? And let me show you something really cool here. I think hopefully this will work. But if we run this, we're not going to see that purple, right? See, we don't see the purple. Over here, when you're running it, I think it's this one. It's this one. And there's a little drop down here and can view UI hierarchy. And it creates like a little layer, like a 3D like layer. I guess you can't see the thing that's not on the screen either, but you see that, you know, we have our label here, we have like, you know, all this stuff. Yeah.
So this is kind of like that web page you showed for the web fundamentals where it stacked everything.
Well, I mean, it's just like a special tool for, yeah, it's like a special tool for debugging. Yeah. So, but the idea is, okay, so we have our view here. We're just not able to see it, right? Good. So what we want to do is, let's do this. We're going to go to our view controller. We're going to open up the assistant editor. We're going to look at the storyboard. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an outlet, but I'm going to create the outlet for the constraint for the leading edge, right? Because right now it's negative 300. That is the thing I want to alter for it to move in and move out. Right? So I'm going to look for that constraint down here, and it's view.leading, right? It highlighted for me, this guy. So I'm going to control drag it over here, and I'm going to say, you know, menu view leading constraint. And notice that the type is NS layout constraint. That's the type of the object it is. Right? So we connect that. So over here, if I say handle my label tapped, I can say menu view leading constraint dot constant, that's the number, equals to 0. Right? If I do that, I can force it to come back in. Right? Because right now it's negative 300. Boom. Right? We move the constraint. So what we want to do is that we want it to kind of like bounce out, right? We want to animate out. So in order to do animations, let's do this. To start, when the view loads, I want to set this guy to negative 300, right? And I just want to do that explicitly so that every single time I know it's exactly 300, right? Now, when the label is tapped, I want to make it 0, but I also want to animate it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this animation code, and you see it over here, right? So we're just going to copy all of this, including that. We're going to put it in here. Whoa, okay, that's not good. Okay, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. There we go. All right.
Should we worry about what each line does?
Well, I'm going to show you what it does. Yeah. So let me just comment this out. Right? I just want to have it here. Let's just create our own. Right? We're going to type it out and have it autocomplete for us. Right? So it's going to be UI view dot animate. Right? And now look at, we have all of these selections. So we're going to do the one with duration, this one. Okay. So the first one is duration. We're going to set it to 0.5 seconds. The second one is the delay. We're going to make 0-second delay. The options is going to be, or actually we don't want this one. We want the one with the spring damping and the initial velocity. Right? So, well, for the options, we can say, right now we're just going to make an empty array. In addition to these options, we also want spring damping and initial velocity. All right, so I'm just going to copy spring damping over here, and then I'm going to put in initial spring velocity over here. extra argument. Yeah, so this should be animate and not animate keyframes, right? Because it's animate over here. Okay, now we're good. So animations, this is going to be the function that executes during the animation, and this is going to be the completion function that runs when it is completed. All right. So let me see. Actually, we don't even need this completion one. We're not going to do anything when it completes. Okay. So basically, what it is, it's a UI.animate, and we're running this function with a bunch of arguments, right? And some of the arguments are optional. You can add in, depending on which arguments you add, it's going to do some different behavior, right? So this is kind of like what's called function overloading. Depending on what arguments you give it, it's a different function, right? So, but what we're doing here is the thing that we want really is this function here, and also before that function, we need this piece of code to start the animation, right? If you don't have this, then it's not going to work. So before that, we're going to have self.view.set needs layout, and then inside of this block during the animation, we're going to put in this piece, code inside the function. Right? Self.view layout if needed. Right? With this, it should do the thing that we want. Right? And you don't have to memorize this. Usually I have it somewhere and I just copy and paste it every time. Okay. So I'm going to make a documentation here. I'm going to say code to start animation. I'm going to do this, and then it ends over here. All right, so in the future, you can just copy this block of code, and it should work. And the thing I have in here, in the options, UI view animation options allow user interaction, basically allows me to, while the animation is going on, it allows me to do other things. Right? So you generally want to have this. Otherwise, everybody has to wait until the animation is ended to do anything else. So you can't even cancel it. So everything in this yellow block here is basically all you need to do animations. Right? You just copy and paste that. Every project you do, you can kind of play around with these arguments here, right? But let's take a look. Yeah, like that, right? So it went out to 0, but notice that we had this little, we had a little gap there. Or, I mean, let's do this. Let's do it, let's have it when we click on it, it goes back, right? So we're toggling it, right? So let's say if menu view leading constraint dot constant is not equal to 0, then we're going to make it 0. Or else we're going to make it 300, negative 300. Right? So you will, in effect, have toggled it. See? Right? But notice that this is where it's really useful to use this debugging slow animations so we can really see what's going on. See? It's going overboard, right? Because of the spring. So that's why we don't want to make it 0. Maybe we want to make it negative 100 or something, right? So the spring will actually still be, have like a buffer for it to cover up that white space, right? So instead of 0, let's make it negative, 50, right? So here we can make it negative 50. And we're going to cancel the slow animations. There we go. See? This looks like a pretty nifty little menu bar here, right? So using animations, you can literally that's all you got to do is just this block of code, right? And there's also different variations of that function, and you can play around with it on your own. But for me, I find that this is the one that I always use, right? So you'll have the code later on. Don't use the code in here. Use the code in the actual projects. because these things they change their syntax all the time. And the good thing to do is like have something to reference, but type it out yourself to make sure that auto completes. All right. Okay, so that's all I got. Is there anything you guys want me to demo, like an assignment or anything, from whatever was before the cold call? All right. If not, then we're good to go. All right. Cool.